I'm your main man returned today to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, the Illusionist. I'm going to talk about Illusionist from AD&D First Edition, Second Edition, Third Edition, 3.5 Pathfinder, and we're going to talk about that class, and we're going to talk about even going forward Dungeons and Dragons, and then additionally, I'm going to give you my views on the Illusionist, what I think they did wrong, what I think they could have done better, what I would do differently, what you can do differently. So there's a lot you'll be able to take away from this. Before we get to that, my friend Steve Fillmore, he is going through cancer right now. We have a website up to try to help him. If you can help him, go help him. I'll put a link in the box below after I upload it. And if I don't, remind me, because sometimes I just forget to do that stuff. Of course, you come check me out on Facebook at Main Man. For to send me a friend request, I always approve those, and you can get all that sort of information. Check me out also for the company Raw Immersive Games, which you'll like that on Facebook. And we have just a real quick update for Within the Ring of Fire. Now, we had a little snag, and books might not be quite as quick as I'd wanted them to, but I mean, it's not like we're not talking a tremendous period of time. Definitely on less than a month. So. That being said, though, here's a nice little sneak preview for you. That's right. This is number 2 right here in my hand. That's hardback. That's softback. You're going to have options. You can choose how to spend your money. Of course, we're also going to have everything on PDF. I'm going to be offering a PDF bundle package, which will get you the PDFs quicker than anyone else. It'll get you everything, all the PDFs of the entire line. Right now, the line, it looks like it's going to be a minimum of 6 books. It may be a little north of that, but everything from Within the Ring of Fire on PDF for one price. And so we'll come back and talk about that, Jack. We have some videos on Within the Ring of Fire. If you have not seen that yet, go educate yourself and get the most immersive role-playing game allowable by law. Now, let's talk about the laws of Dungeons and Dragons and the laws of the Illusionist. Now, the Illusionist, it can be simply another sort of wizard, but one of the interesting things that it allows you is Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder often have a knock on them by people who are quite serious role players of being games that are stagnant and limiting towards your role-playing ability. The Illusionist gives you the wonderful option of, in a game that has Dungeons & Dragons Pathfinder, there's nowhere that has a collective narrative support in the game. In fact, role-playing support is fairly base and limited in those games. That being said, the Illusionist, just by the fact of what it is, gives you collaborative narrative ability. You are able to describe the scene, even amongst, your really poor level players. You're going to have the ability to describe what does your phantasmal force look like. What does this look like? What does it sound like? How does it feel? How do we interact with it? What's the color? And all of a sudden it starts leading into this a wonderful upward role-playing momentum, which can infect others at the table. Once you start playing better, people at the table are going to want to play better. So the Illusionist can really give you some wonderful tools for that. So for that, your main man salutes the Illusionist class, Barbarian style. So you can do Barbarian Hordes at salute the Illusionist, for it gives you that key, that piece in a Dungeons and Dragons game, which is really it's really a pretty cool thing to have that option, to have that ability in a Dungeons and Dragons game. It's not really often that you're going to see that in a Dungeons and Dragons game. You're where the class itself fundamentally produces that high level of narrative, not necessarily role playing, but narrative support, because you essentially have to fill in the blanks. You're even, you're very young 12-year-old players who there may not even be a minute of role playing in the game. All of a sudden, you're like, "Well, I cast this illusion. Okay, well, what does it do? What does it look like? How does it act? Well, because they want to see and to be able to work around it, even from the power gamer, the simulationist, these sorts of players, they have to understand what you're doing. You have to describe it to them. They have to listen. You understand? So that gives you a wonderful tool for narrative. And narrative, I think, is really much the best friend of role-playing, and it helps to stimulate an immersive style, which is, of course, what your main man is all about these days and all days, till the end of days. So, the class itself, where I think, basically, let me kind of run through what the class is, okay? Specialty Wizard in your Dungeons & Dragons game. It has you know, your D4 hit points. I think in Pathfinder they give them a D6, which I think is a little silly, but whatever. They're not going to be able to fight very well. They got the limited weapons they got. In fact, even the Illusionist, I think, is even supposed to be a worse fighter than the normal wizard. If somehow, at least that's always the mental mindset that I brought away from the Illusionist. This guy isn't really a warrior at all. There are some sorts of wizards that certainly can fit the warrior wizard build, which is a huge favorite. Loads of people love to play a guy who could cast spells and fight. You know, at least maybe sacrificing a little on each to really be able to do both pretty well. Which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. I quite like that myself. So with the Illusionist, you have a character that can really bring in this sort of David Copperfield-esque aspect. And to me, that's what it is. You know, I don't like the idea of it just being a wizard. And I think as soon as you're like, and I do my phantasmal forces, and I do my ghost sounds, and my ventriloquisms, and la-di-da, and my invisibilities, and now fireball for real. It's like, really? What? All of a sudden you're not an illusionist anymore. You're just a wizard. And that's one of the problems of specialty wizards in D&D. Now, your main man has a video of how I do specialty wizards, non-Vancian, non-magic missile, fireball throwing illusionist, because at a point, it's immersive breaking. It's like, you're not an illusionist. You're just a bad wizard that does lots of illusion spells. And it forces you to be less creative because it gives you this easy out. I just throw my invocation spell at him, fireball in the mouth. What? No. Why not be sneaky? Why not use the invisibility? Why not use X, Y, and Z ability you have at your disposal for being an illusionist? Why not be an illusionist? So when the spells come together, they can create problems, and no class is more hindered by having other class spells. Now, there are a few here and there, maybe a few divinations, or you can make a great case for an illusionist having a few enchantment spells, most certainly. You can see the Beguiler class in Dungeons & Dragons, so we'll eventually get around to reviewing, trying to probably go through a few more wizards, and yes, a druid class at some point. But when you have that, it starts tainting the concept. Like, right, you've added more power, and you've taken away from your role-playing ability, from the fact you have to think, you have to constantly be thinking, you have to constantly be creating narrative in your head, and now all of a sudden, okay, fireball. It cheapens the whole experience. Magic missile. It detracts. You see, often less is more. Less spells, less power, but more imagination, more creativity, more narrative contribution that you can create with the character. And that's, after all, what you should be playing for, at least in my mind, in my game. And if you're playing with me, that's the way you're going to play, because you're going to get eaten alive by the other players you're playing out there, you know, playing circles around you, to be quite honest about it. So when you have that illusionist, to me, I think the illusionist really is as misclassified as a wizard. And really, in frank reality, an illusionist is a rogue class. To those of you who have never played anything before 2nd edition, rogue class, that might not make any sense, but a rogue, that's like a bard or a thief. You know, that's an illusionist. He's a thief. And I mean, in a real sense, you know, this is a guy who should have really high escape artist. If you're playing illusionist and you don't have escape artist, if you don't have pickpockets, those are the skills you should have, and you should be better than a thief at those skills. You should be great, because that's all it is. And you're throwing the stuff off. It's misdirection. It's confusion. It's shenanigans and so forth like that. That doesn't really stack up well to a Dungeons & Dragons system. Dungeons & Dragons doesn't really support the illusionist idea wonderfully, but if you kind of stack magic on top of that with these abilities to handle a little more mundane aspects, and your game master gives you a bit of latitude, a bit of leeway, you could really create some wonderful scenes there where you are, like I say, playing the Harry Houdini, playing the David Copperfield, playing, what is it, Chris Angel, or Penn and Teller. That stage magician kind of thing. That is what an illusionist really is. So it can be really a fantastic character concept, and there are ways that you can bring that in, you know, to your combat. You know, essentially, I think a character like that might have some sneak attack or backstab. He's going to be able to get out of grapples. You know, probably double jointed, and having some abilities like that, which I personally think can make for a hell of an interesting rogue type character. The fact where it breaks down, though, is once you start throwing those fireballs, once you start throwing those magic missiles, once you start using spells that are like, yeah, everybody at the table, here's your litmus test. So you're at your table, you're like, yeah, it's an illusionist. And he does, really? Even for a second, that comes in your mind. Come on. I mean, you gotta admit, your main man has a valid point right here. about what we're talking about the Illusionist, because you want to render that concept. It's that concept you want to do, right? I mean, just play a generic wizard if you're wanting to play a generic wizard that has lots of illusion spells. I don't think it quite works well enough to just stack that on a bard, because I don't see any reason you should be getting illusion spells slower, and that's what a bard does, or be capped off. But the bard can make a fairly decent account for what I'm talking about here. The beguiler can make a fairly decent account for what I'm talking about here. But I'm talking about 9th level illusion spells. I'm talking about, having that David Copperfield add in a fantasy layer, not distort it, not David Copperfield throwing fireballs at you. David Copperfield, it has these, illusions so real that he can kill you. And that can make a really interesting, fascinating fiction when you put that together. So, I personally like the Illusionist class. I haven't played Illusionist in a long time, though I would certainly play them. Not my favorite of the specialties. We've been over those before, but I think it has a huge amount of potential. It is great for that collaborative narrative. It's a wonderful class if you're just really kind of starting out towards learning role playing, or perhaps you're starting out, but you're the best role player in your group. Play an Illusionist, pick all illusion spells, maybe some enchantment, maybe some divination. I think those probably go best hand in hand with illusions. And you start slowly bringing your group along. You start slowly exposing them to that collective narrative, to adding narrative to the game master, to explaining in vivid detail how this. And then you're helping your game master too. You're giving him a great scene. You're taking pressure off him, and you're maybe even help explaining him how to do it, how to describe, how to add nuance, texture, flavor, how to add the feeling in there, which are wonderful things to bring away when you engage the mind. When you put the image in the mind, you create a much more powerful story, and that is definitely something your main man is very into. So that's my views on the Illusionist class. Leave your comments below. Feel free to engage each other. I will try to answer the way they have done things now. I have a lot of videos. I don't know why they just lock me out. It's like, you can't leave a comment. So I try to respond to you guys on some of these videos. I still don't know what the Google Plus, Yahoo, Google Plus YouTube connection. It's wonky on my end, so we'll do the best we can with that. But let me know what you think about the Illusionist class below.